وبركاته. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم ثبتنا عند الموت بلا إله إلا الله. اللهم اجعلنا من الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. آمين يا رب العالمين. In this month's lecture series, we're looking at some of the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the most important things in the life of a Muslim. In fact, one of the scholars, rahimahullah, he said that if a person wants to motivate himself to do any good action, what is the greatest motivator? What is the motivator behind every one of these? It's knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he who knows Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and knows Him well, then he's the one who he will be the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with his worship. And he will be the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in his belief. And he will be the person who has yaqeen of iman inside his heart, because he knows his Lord and he knows who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. So this is one of the most important things for a Muslim to study, is who is our Lord. And so this week we are taking the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Jabbar, the Compeller, you could translate it as, or the one who restores, the ever restorer. And we'll look into these means that come. When we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we think of someone who is capable of anything. And it takes him no effort at all to do all of these actions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly doing. When was the last time you stopped to think, who is keeping this heart beating? Because you are not physically doing anything for your heart to keep beating. When was the last time you looked and saw, who is that which keeps the sky aloft and does not let it fall down upon us? Who is that who keeps the sun in its place and the earth rotating around it and all the planets in the solar system with their balance? That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is Al-Jabbar. So we'll go into the meaning of Al-Jabbar. What does the word Jim, Ba and Ra, what do these letters mean in the Arabic language? Then we'll go to what are some of the signs. How can we see Al-Jabbar within our world, the world around us? And lastly, what can we do to reflect on this and implement this name within our daily lives? Because that is the ultimate goal of knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What benefits can we take from it? And so perhaps we begin with the meaning of this word Jabr, the Jim, Ba and Ra, which make up the word Jabbar. One of them, it's the meaning of ikrah, of force or compulsion, to make something happen. So the Arabs will use this word, for example, if you force someone to do a certain action, that is called ikrah. That is force, that is compulsion. You are making them do something which originally they did not want to do, or originally would not have done that action without your intervention. So ikrah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses this word for tyrants in the Quran. Jabbar. He calls him Jabbar. And Isa alayhi salam, he says in one of the ayat in the Quran that he's not a Jabbar upon the people. He's not Shaqiyya, he's not Jabbar. He's not a tyrant to them. So the Arabs use this word for tyrants because a tyrant forces his people into submission. So one of the meanings of this word, Jim, Ba and Ra, is force, ikrah. Another meaning is al-ulu wal-izz. Ulu is highness, loftiness, mightiness. And izz is might. And ulu is highness. So another meaning of this word, Jabbar, is that it is someone who is high and someone who has might, who has power. So we see when Musa alayhi salam speaks in the Quran, he says, "Inna fiha qawman jabbarin." Or the people of Musa, they say that there's people inside this town, they are Jabbareen. They are people of, they're tall, they're powerful people. They're powerful people, so he calls them Jabbareen. So this meaning of Jabbar also has the meaning of someone who is high, someone who has power, someone who has might. Then we have the last bit, which is Al-Islah, repair. And from this we get the word Jabira, which is the word that the Arabs use for a bandage. Why? Because it is placed upon a wound or a bone or a body part that has been broken. So the Arabs use the word Jabira because that comes from the word to repair. And we see in the dua of the Prophet ﷺ, between the two tashahhud, he used to say, Allahumma ghfirli warhamni wajburni. So in one narration, he uses this word, ujuburni, which means to repair my affairs, rectify my affairs. And that's this word, that's the islah in the word Jabbar. And from it, we actually also get a very interesting mathematical concept, is that of algebra. The word algebra actually originates from the Arabic of Al-Jabbar. And it is referred to this as such because the origins of algebra was to repair or to fix an equation that was given. So those of you who have studied algebra, you know that you have x on one side and you have some numbers on the other, and you want to fix the equation by rearranging it such that x is some number. And that's the essence of algebra. And that's where the Arabs got the word Al-Jabbar, to repair, because Al-Jabbar means to repair. So algebra, it looks to repair the two sides of an equation. So the word Jabbar, when we say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Jabbar, He has these three qualities. He has ikrah, compulsion, force in what He does, such that no one is able to withstand the might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No one can withstand the commandments. Next we have Al-Ulu wal-Izz, loftiness and might. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does something, He does it with highness and He does it with mightiness. And the last meaning, Al-Islah, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does something and He's Al-Jabbar when doing it, that is a sign of repairing or fixing something. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when we use His name Al-Jabbar, we see all of these three things in play. Let's look at some examples of how we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the one who is Al-Jabbar. How many times have you looked at yourself, at people around you, and seen things that no one has control over? For example, your skin color, the color of your eyes, the color of your hair, the shape of your face, the shape of your body. There are so many things in our lives that we see that we have no control over. And that is Al-Jabbar. That is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In that, هُوَ الَّذِي يُصَوِّرُكُمْ فِي الْأَرْحَامِ كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who molds, who shapes, who gives the appearance فِي الْأَرْحَامِ, in the womb, كَيْفَ يَشَاءُ, however He wants. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants something to happen, He wants it to happen in His way. And that is Allah being Al-Jabbar. That's Allah using His force, using His compulsion to say, this is how this is going to turn out. And there's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectifying and showing His might over the affairs of the people, that this is how this action will play out. And that is how every single person in this earth, on this earth, is different because of the compulsion of Al-Jabbar. It is not something that you and I have a say in how our hands are shaped, or how big our head is, or how small our nose is. This has been determined for us and decreed for us by Al-Jabbar. And you see people go through lengths and lengths and lengths to try to control what they look like. That they use chemicals for their hair, or they use surgery for their face, all of which is temporary. Yet the shape that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Jabbar, has given your face is permanent. The color that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Jabbar, has given your hair is permanent to a certain degree after it starts growing. That is Allah, that is Al-Jabbar. He controls the affairs, and we can see that in the quality of the people. And then we see at a greater level, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordaining the matters of the heavens and the earth. There is nothing that happens except that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Jabbar, had a hand in it. That the fly that goes from outside and lands in your windowsill of your window in your home, except that Al-Jabbar let it go through that path. There is not a single leaf that falls off a branch and falls to the floor, except that Al-Jabbar has ordered it to do so and commanded it to do so. There is not a single mountain or animal or bird that has gone through an action except that Al-Jabbar has ordained it. And that is when we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Inna Allah yahkumu ma yurid. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ordains whatever He pleases, whatever He wants. That is where, when we look at the heavens and the earth, we see the compulsion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala everywhere. We have no control over many things in our life. In fact, a lot of us, we don't, even when we go to the science, we don't understand things that we have going on in our life. And we'll see that very soon in one of the examples. Another thing, when we see all the prophets, Anbiya alayhim as-salam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected, or we see the angels, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala selected Jibreel alayhi salam for the descent of Wahi, when He selected Israfil to be the one who blows the horn, when we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala making decisions like this, we see that the human has no say in any of these matters. When Musa alayhi salam was given prophethood, he spoke to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and he said, why me? You have my brother who has all of his qualifications which are better than I have. He has better speech. He does not have a criminal record in Egypt like I do. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Musa alayhi salam for that message. That is Allah Al-Jabbar. When He says, وَرَبُّكَ يَخْلُقُ مَا يَشَاءُ وَيَخْتَارُ. Allah creates whatever He wills and He chooses. No one else has a choice in that. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose Mecca as the blessed city, no one else had a say in that. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted the Kaaba to be built in the middle of the desert, Ibrahim alayhi salam didn't have a say in that. So that is Al-Jabbar, the one who selects whatever He wills. And we see that in all the prophets that came before us, in anyone and everyone who was selected for a certain position. That is Al-Jabbar. He is the one who selects all those things. Perhaps we'll go through some examples where we can understand truly how at faults that we are and how in service we are to Al-Jabbar, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was one experiment that was conducted in the late 20th century, 1980s, 1990s, in which one of the doctors at a university wanted to conduct a study to look at sleep deprivation. What happens when we deprive people of sleep for X amount of hours? And his goal was to reach 100 hours and see what happens to the human if we deprive them of sleep for up to 100 hours. And this was one of the first experiments done of its kind, and the results were as we expected nowadays. After a certain amount of time, 30, 40 hours into the experiment, the participants, their eyes would get droopy, they would get itchy, and the effects on their body went greater and greater and magnified, such that when we head towards this 50, 60 hour mark without sleep, they started to see hallucinations. Their eyes started to get foggy. And then you go to 80, 90 hour mark where they started to rub their eyes. One of the participants was rubbing his eyes because he said it was as if cobwebs were draped along his eyes, and he actually asked some of the doctors to help him clear out those cobwebs. This is what happens to the human body. For hours being deprived of one of the natural stages of the body, the sleep. And so we see the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala within this. Allah is Al-Jabbar. That body that requires sleep, if it is deprived of it, then you can see all of the negative effects that come to it. Such that the experiment could not actually go to 100 hours because the participants were displaying signs of psychosis at the 98, 97 hour mark, in that they were going insane, clinically insane. And all of this because they were deprived of a natural body process that happens automatically for all of us. Our head hits the pillow and a few minutes later, we're sleeping. And we have no choice over when we sleep. We don't have a choice of, I want to sleep now. We can put our head on the pillow and some nights we'll stay up for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Jabbar, is the one who ordained that sleep for you. And He's the one that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentions in the hadith where He takes the soul. And that's why we make the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we wake up. The one who has given us life after taking it away, after making us dead for that certain amount of time. It's as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Jabbar, has by force taken our soul and then returned it to us. He's repaired our body and given that soul, that body, that mind, the rest that it needed. That is Al-Jabbar. If we look at another element that we are still trying to understand, your body right now, as it is sitting, is doing so many things to keep itself safe. If you look at the immune system of the body, it is something that scientists are still studying to this day. There are things inside the body, processes, cells, which we don't know what they do. We don't know their function. But we know that they're critical and important in what they do. And if you look at what happens once you get a small cut, just a small cut, some pathogens enter, and the body has this whole system which it goes through again and again, day in, day out, without you even noticing. It will detect it, and it will send cells to that area. If you have a particularly big cut, you'll notice it gets red. Your body will swell, your temperature will rise. You'll get natural, scabbing and wounding because the dead cells will actually create a barrier to prevent further infiltration of other foreign elements and other foreign cells. And then what will happen is your body will send white blood cells and T cells and B cells and all these cells to make sure that that does not spread anywhere else around the body. And if it does, then the body will send all of these other chemicals to detect where is it. And your body does this 24 hours a day. It doesn't stop. In fact, your body is doing that right now. There's cancer cells living in your body right now that your body constantly fights. We have millions upon millions upon millions of cells in our body. And every second, more are being made and more are dying. And some of them, they have that small chance of mutating, turning into cancerous cells. And if your body wasn't constantly fighting them, you would be gone. So your body is constantly doing this. And who is there to make that happen except for Al-Jabbar? Who is making those white blood cells do their job? Who is making your immune system do its job except for Al-Jabbar? And there are cells which do their job so well that scientists they're so amazed that a blob of proteins, which is essentially what our cells are, just protein, encapsulated. Scientists are so amazed that these small, tiny cells without much in them can do all these actions by themselves without anything commanding them. Your brain doesn't control that. Your heart doesn't control that. But rather, your body does it of its own accord. And of course, we know that that is Al-Jabbar at play. And next we see, perhaps the last example we'll give, is when we see someone in such a great mental or psychological state, and we see people who they're depressed and they think that they're never going to get back from that depression. People who go through grief, really like not small elements of grief, but really big traumatic events in their life. And they think that there's no way out of it for them. Or we see people who struggle with addictions, such that they think they will never get out of this addiction. Who is He who controls all of this and takes that person out of that? That is Al-Jabbar. When you see someone who is going through that stage of grief, intense grief, in which they think there will be no tomorrow for them, who is the one who saves them? That is Al-Jabbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectifies their affairs. Who is the one who, when they come from broken families, who is the one who repairs that person and sets them on the right path? That is Al-Jabbar. Who is the one who, when they struggle with addiction, drugs, alcohol, all this, who is the one who rescues them from that? That is Al-Jabbar. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His infinite wisdom, is the one who repairs and who takes care of the affairs of the Muslim and the disbeliever alike, without any need for the human to do anything. That is the ikrah, the compulsion that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala exerts over His creation. That we don't have a say in how our body works, but Allah has ordained it to work. That we don't have a say in what we want happening in our body, but that is what happens. And we don't have a say in when our affairs are fixed, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is in charge of fixing those affairs. That is Al-Jabbar. And also something that we can look at, bring it more to a contemporary world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who compels circumstances to occur, such that when we see what happens around the world, do not think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unaware. And do not think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has no say in what is happening around the world. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compels these things to happen. One of the great scholars, rahimahullah, said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who compels the oppressors. He's the one who makes the oppressors do those things, such that honor is restored to the oppressed. He's the one that compels the oppressors, such that honor is restored to the oppressed. So when we look around and we see we're coming up, or we have come up on the 1 year, the demarcation, the 1 year mark after the events in Gaza that started this brutal, endless massacre that has been occurring, we see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in His infinite wisdom, we do not pretend to know what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's wisdom was behind these. But He's the one who compels the Israeliyah to do all of these atrocities. And He does so. And the scholar said, rahimahullah, such that one day honor will be restored to those people who are oppressed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will balance and repair everything, even if we don't see it in our immediate future. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala repairs. He's Al-Jabbar. So even if we see things that happen and that occur, and we say, how is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets these things happen? We remember that He is Al-Jabbar. He controls the events. And He is the one who wanted this to happen. And He has a reason behind it. And if not in this world, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be Al-Jabbar. And He will repair and rectify all of the affairs of the Muslims and the non-Muslims. And He's the one who will put all the tyrants in their place. And He's the one who will give those who are oppressed the things that they deserve, and the place that they deserve, and the high status that they deserved. So those people who are oppressed around the world, do not think that Allah, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ اللَّهَ غَافِلًا عَمَّا يَعْمَلُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Don't think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unaware of what happens or what the oppressors are doing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is fully aware. And He is compelling them into this. And He's doing it for His reasons. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will rectify the affairs, just as He did for the people of Musa, whom were oppressed for years upon years upon years. In fact, we see Musa alayhi salam being born into slavery, being taken to the kingdom of Fir'aun, growing up from a baby to an adult, leaving Egypt and coming back before the people of Egypt were saved. Imagine how long that must have been for them. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala let Fir'aun rule this entire place of Egypt like a tyrant for many, many, many years, such that Musa alayhi salam was born and grew into a man, into an adult, before coming back and saving Bani Israel. Many years. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saved Bani Israel and will give every single believer their rights on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And He will give Fir'aun and their people their rights and their punishment that they deserve on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that they will be they will be from the worst of punishments. They will be given the worst. Udkhulu ala fir'auna ashadd al-'adhab. Give them the worst punishments that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. So another thing that we can we can look at, in order to understand Al-Jabbar, and perhaps we'll end on this, is for us to understand our place in the world. We know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Jabbar. He's the one who compels things to happen. He's the one who knows the affairs of the people, and He is the one who repairs them. And He does so with loftiness and with might. And so we should understand that anytime something happens in the world, know your place and know my place in these matters. That who are we to question the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Who are we to fight against the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And when you and I submit to the reality that there is no Jabbar except Allah, there is no one who has any power, any might, any chance of compelling others, any chance of rectifying except Allah, that is when you and I truly submit to Islam. When we realize that our entire world revolves around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His capabilities, that is when you and I understand who we are as Muslims. And that when we stand to pray, we are thanking the one who has compelled us to that prayer. When we read Quran, we are thanking the one who has made us Muslim and able to recite the Quran. And when we fast, we thank the one and we are grateful to the one who has compelled us towards this fasting and who has made us able to fast. So anytime anything happens in our world, we know and we remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Jabbar, and He's the controller of all of these affairs, and He's the one who rectifies all of these affairs. And if anything happens on the earth, it is only because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compelled it to be as such. And Allah in His wisdom knows why He has done this, and we believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will rectify anything that happens on His earth. Jazakumullah khairan. Inshallah, we try to implement this and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how He is Al-Jabbar and how He controls everything. And when we recite ayat and we see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in His infinite wisdom controlling things, controlling the affairs of the heavens and the earth, we remember our place and how little we are and how we are subject to the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is when we truly will realize who we are and who we are in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فجزاكم الله خيرا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك جزاكم الله خيرا والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.